Shavan Sen joins us on the broadcast from Oman as well. Shavan, we are seeing in the backdrop of all these failed diplomatic conversations, the aggression still continues on the ground. Tell us what's happening on the ground right now.
Well, in fact, Priyanka, let me first start away from the location where we are. After spending almost 24 hours in the port city of Odessa, we decided to come to a place called Uman. Now, this is basically the Jewish hub of Ukraine. In fact, one of the first attacks that took place in Uman when the invasion actually began, with a message perhaps that the Jewish settlement is not really safe here. And this attack took place right in the city center of Uman. We are basically on our way. In a short while from now, when we actually reach the spot, perhaps we would be in a position to show all our viewers the kind of destruction that has taken place and what is it that the Jewish population of Ukraine essentially have to say, given the fact that they found this as a safe haven and a lot of messaging has taken place. Not to forget, President Zelensky himself is a Jew, and we have seen the kind of support that he's actually got from a cross-section of people. So Uman becomes important and interesting given the fact that you have a different messaging altogether emanating from this city. Now, that's what Uman looks like to us. There hasn't been several attacks that have taken place, unlike in other parts of Ukraine. I would say that this was one attack that has taken place in Uman, and thereafter, this city to a larger extent has remained off the radar of the Russian troops. But having said that, let's now talk about what's really happening on the ground. We're talking about the 36th day of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and has things really changed on the ground? Now, it is a little perplexing given the fact that in the backdrop of those negotiations that were taking place, some groups have indicated that, okay, there is a slight positive signal to it. But having said that, even the Ukrainians are not very confident that this is going to really have any sort of impact. In fact, President Zelensky took these talks with a pinch of salt, saying that while they're talking about a peace treaty to be signed by both sides, you are seeing the kind of aggression on the ground itself. Even the fact that when Russia indicated that they're going to change their operation tactic from Kiev and Chernihiv area. Late last night, we've been told that outskirts of Kiev has seen a lot of shelling that has taken place, and not just that, there is a place not very far from where we are broadcasting right now, a place called Melnytsky, which is something that we'll also be targeting in the next 24 to 48 hours to reach there, because that area also saw aerial bombardment missile strikes that have taken place. And even the place that we were yesterday in Odessa, while we were reporting from there, there were loud explosions that were taking place. We at that point in time couldn't really verify what was really happening on the ground. But later in the day, we figured out that the Russian missiles that were basically being launched outside the Ukrainian territorial water from the Black Sea, these missiles were was targeting a place called Mykolaiv. Mykolaiv was about 45 miles away from where we were reporting yesterday, and a regional administrative building was targeted in which the governor of Mykolaiv was present, and the death toll has perhaps gone up now. The latest estimate that we were given was about 12 people who died in that missile attack that took place in the regional administrative building of Mykolaiv. So while talks are happening, on the same hand, you are looking at these sporadic bombings that are taking place. Of course, the situation isn't the very same, especially in places like Kharkiv, the besieged city of Kharkiv, or for that matter, even in Mariupol. It's just a matter of time, perhaps, before Russians actually claim victory as far as Mariupol is concerned, because they've made their entry into Mariupol, and most of the government buildings is where they're targeting. They are basically on the outskirts, and some parts of it they've already been able to capture. Kherson is already in there. They've already captured Kherson. There have been pockets from where the Ukrainians are basically trying to still regain that city, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon, because remember, that very area, eastern side and southern side, is where the Russians are heavily concentrating, because they find that as a strategic gain for them. Because if you really look at the Donbass region itself, before the invasion, 30% of Donbass region was under the control of the Ukrainians. Larger part was under the control of the Russian-backed separatists. Now, almost, I would say, 90% of the Donbass region is pretty much taken over by the Russians. So that's the eastern part. If you take a look at what's happening down south, barring Odessa, the other cities, Russians have made a lot more gains, and perhaps the idea behind taking more control of that area is because it is extremely strategic. The Sea of Azov and Black Sea. If they are able to cut off the Ukrainians from these two areas, then remember it's going to be a huge catastrophe for the Ukrainians, because you are essentially hitting the economic corridor of the Ukrainians. So somewhere down the line, in the days to come, perhaps that's going to be the focus. Apart from that, if you look at up north, of course, there is also reports now coming in that there is an attempt that has been made by the Russians to remobilize. So what they are essentially doing is that they are bringing in the second and the fourth unit from the occupied territory of Georgia. The Russians are once again bringing in the troops, remobilizing them, and bringing them inside. Now, these are the two units from the south military district of Russian Federation. Now, these two units are being brought in from Georgia inside Ukraine, and there are also other tank regiments which we are being told that the Russians are trying to remobilize. So yes, there is once again an attempt that the Russians are basically making to remobilize themselves. It is difficult to basically understand the game plan at this stage, barring the fact that it does appear that they are looking for some strategic gains. They are certainly not looking at a position where they're trying to occupy Ukraine in entirety, but certainly an attempt to break away some parts of Ukraine, pretty much the way they've done in places like Georgia, or what they have done in Crimea, the annexation of Crimea itself. So it looks like right now the Russians, while they're talking about a peace treaty with Ukraine, there is also an attempt to at least take away some parts which they believe is going to be a strategic win for them.
Shravan, you mentioned the Donbass region, and very importantly, there's a lot of momentum that we have seen in that region as well. But let's also talk about this referendum that had also been making, multiple reports of that we had gotten. Now, the Donbass head had also stated that I think soon a referendum will be held in the territory of Republic, in which people will exercise their absolute constitutional right and express their opinion on joining the Russian Federation as well. Now, for some reason, I am sure that this is exactly how it will be. Now, this is coming from the Donbass, the leaders there as well. So help us understand and put this into perspective as to what's happening on the ground in the Donbass region with respect to this referendum that has also come to light.
Well, Priyanka, the notoriety of a referendum, especially if it has been conducted from the Russians, it's known to the entire world. So whether at all it's going to be extremely legitimate is something that it's better not to comment on it, given the fact that in the past a lot of questions have already been raised about it. Be it, if you remember the referendum that's actually taken place in Crimea also, questions have been raised about it. But it's important to point out here for people to understand that if you're talking about that eastern region, a part of it which we visited just before the war began, it was just a day before the war began, we were in the Luhansk area, a place called Sasha. That's a pro-Russian area altogether. And even before the invasion actually began, this area that we are talking about, the Donbass region, where the LPR and DPR, in a decree issued by the Russian Duma, they basically recognized as an independent region. And that's part of the negotiations with Ukraine, where Russia is putting more pressure on Ukraine that they should recognize these two regions as independent, which initially, if you really look at it, the Ukrainians were, they appeared to be extremely adamant about the fact that they're not going to, agree to that. They're not going to cede to any inch of their territory. But it does appear now that they're basically bringing down the tempo, at least as far as these regions are concerned. Not much has been spoken about whether at all they're going to accept it. It does appear that somewhere down the line, even the Ukrainians have come to terms with the fact that they are losing out the Donbass region itself. They may not publicly admit it, but let's understand something. Before the invasion, even at that point in time, they had only 30% control over the territory in that area. Large part of it was being, controlled by the Russian-backed separatists and also the leaders that you were basically mentioning. So it was never that the Ukrainians had much control in that region. For them to let go that area, maybe some sort of a compromise to ensure that the other parts of Ukraine is not really targeted the way it has right from the beginning. So that could be one way of looking at this scenario when it comes to the Donbass region. And irrespective of what really happens, the referendum where it turns out that a large part of them want to be with Russia, it may not come across as a big surprise. Also look at the tone and tenor of the Ukrainians when it comes to Crimea. Initially, they absolutely did not want to have a word about the annexation of Crimea, but yesterday, when the talks were actually taking place, the president's advisor, Mikhail Podolyak, commented about Crimea, in which they're saying that they're looking at a 15-year process in which they're saying that there will be no military operation. This is going to be resolved by a dialogue. Now, that's the way to look out as far as Crimea is concerned. So the tone and tenor also really changing right now, Priyanka, as far as these contentious issues are concerned.
Well, absolutely. Shravan Sen, their viewers, has been crisscrossing across Ukraine and also in the neighboring countries, getting us all the details of what's really happening on the ground. Thanks a lot, Shravan, for joining us on the broadcast.